but I'm going to start and say welcome everyone to our March book club. I'm going to give you a teeny bit of background. I know a lot of you have been in our book club meetings before, but just a little bit of background about Proper Topper Book Club. We started this last summer, a few months into pandemic, when we realized how much we were missing conversation and ideas and conversation with our friends and really the community that is people who make up our daily lives at Proper Topper. It's the people who come and shop, it's our friends, it's the whole world of ideas that we have there. And we have really loved making the connections that we have through this book club. So tonight I am just absolutely delighted that we are moving into kind of a new slightly lighter realm of a book that takes us to a beach, that makes us kind of, to me, it sort of mirrors where we're feeling right now with moving into new possibilities of travel and possibilities of new places and different places. And I have to be honest, I love the cover of this book. And when I actually was choosing this book, we had made a little escape to the Bahamas very safely with lots of masking and lots of precautions. We carefully made our way to this little house right on the beach with these beautiful clear waters and a little protected cove. And what I could see in the water every day was something that looked very, very much like this beautiful, beautiful artwork. So I was in the mindset for this book, and I was also won over by one of the reviews, one of the glowing reviews that said it was the kind of book that made you want to lick the salt off the pages, which I thought was just amazing. One of the things I love about this beautiful novel is that although it takes you into a beach world, there's still some darkness. There's still a fair amount of darkness because I think it feels hard right now to launch right into feeling cheerful and bright and going to the beach. This is a fascinating and very layered world, and the time shifts felt to me very much like the way that time moves in interesting and strange ways right now. So Tara, I'm going to introduce here, is my partner in crime at Proper Topper, the general manager, and it was actually her idea to launch this book club last summer. Tara is a child of the beach, growing up in a beach town, and so I know she had a special perspective. I'm going to turn this over to her for a minute and also try to figure out how we can get Alicia in on this call. So Tara.
We have Alicia in.
I'm here. After many technical challenges, I'm finally here. Hi.
Okay, I need to unmute you guys. Tara, can you unmute yourself?
I'm unmuted, yeah. I'm sorry I'm shrouded in darkness here. I thought that I would figure out this lighting better. Anyway, and I'm also sorry that if you hear ambient noise behind me, it's because I can't get my earbuds to connect. I just wanted to say how much I love this book and how that Velcro sound is my husband taking his Viking shoes off. And if you hear a dog bark in a second, I will mute myself. I just wanted to say how much I love this book and how
you can't hear.
Oh, and okay, there we go. How it reminded me a lot of growing up in a small beach town, not necessarily the turn of events in the book, but we definitely had some whales and dolphins kind of just trapped in the bay when they got too far in. There was a lot of hullabaloo when that would happen. There's a whale, it smells. There was a lot of that weather related knowledge and, well, we don't have to board up yet because the sky isn't quite green, or the marsh hasn't flooded yet, so it's fine. Or, oh, you have to take the different way around because the marsh did flood. Now you can't get gas or milk if you live too close to the beach. And a lot of that neighborly kind of, well, the Smiths haven't done it, or what are those kids up to? And people growing up together in this small town and in a pretty idyllic setting that I'm sure had a lot of darkness in it that I wasn't necessarily privy to. So I really liked having that connection to this book. And then just the structure, the layout of it was so compelling, and it really kept me wrapped with attention. And I think I've said enough times that we could probably throw it over back to Anna if you're ready. God, I said it again. To introduce our host and our novelist. Does that sound good, Anna? Or they're trying to figure something out.
I had every technical challenge trying to get into the Zoom room, although my earbuds did connect, so that worked for me today. But you know, a lot of other things didn't. So I think Anna's still trying to figure out something.
You'd think after however many, I don't do a lot of Zooms, I just do it for this essentially. But you'd think after a year of everyone really relying on this technology that it would be easy breezy. But
well, I've done a million of these, and I can tell you that each one is really different and has a totally different problem each time. So actually, this isn't even so bad. So I think we're in a good spot, to be honest.
I also Zoom every day, all day, and Chrissy's absolutely right. Like, you just never know what challenges are going to come your way. I think the key is, you know, how you react, right? Like, it's an experience. We're having an experience, and we can choose how to react. Yeah.
Anna, I think you're unmuted now. You're unmuted now, Anna.
Okay.
I think she can't hear us.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah. Because now she's muted again.
I'm unmuting. Look at comedy there. Wait, you're on mute again. You're on mute. We're gonna get there, guys. We're gonna get there. Oh no, Anna, sorry. One more time.
Hey, Tara, I wonder, would it be helpful while we're waiting for Anna to get her situation figured out here? Do you want me to just say a few things about who I am? And then,
yeah, actually, Anna is unmuted now.
Okay.
She's unmuted, so if we try this one more time, because I think she had some glowing words to say about you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I can't hear you. Something is not working on my end, so I haven't heard anything you've said, but please go on, and I'm sorry for all of this, but please go on and converse, and I will hear it on the recording later. Sorry.
Okay.
Go on.
So I guess in that case, Alicia, if you tell us about yourself, and then maybe you can introduce Crissy.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So my name is Alicia Sokol, and I'm a longtime fan of the Proper Topper. I met Anna years ago when our children were young and were in elementary school. And they are now neither of those things. Not young, and they're now in high school. I have always been a reader. I was a reader as a little kid. I'm still a big reader as an adult, and I've enjoyed being a part of the Proper Topper Book Club in the past. And I was really honored when Anna asked if I would lead this book club. I said, oh my goodness, I get to have my Terry Gross moment. It's going to happen. So I am also a local business owner here in DC. I own a Bar 3 studio. It's on 14th Street. For those of you that are in DC or know DC, it's 5 years old. And the thing I love most about Bar 3 is the way it brings together people. And oh, thank you, Lori. Lori's giving me some clapping hands. I have some studio members here on our Zoom tonight who read the book and who are interested in hearing Crissy talk about her beautiful book. So I'm just really honored to be here. And here's what I can tell you about Crissy. We had a call last week and I got a chance to talk to her a little bit about this beautiful book. This is her debut novel. And I have a lot of really great questions for her, and I think we're going to have a wonderful discussion. But Crissy, why don't you say a few things that you want everyone to know about you?
There's nothing that's exciting about me. Yeah, this
Untrue.
is this is my debut novel, kind of based on my life in California, where I'm from. I grew up in the Los Angeles area. I'm third generation, almost fourth generation LA. And I teach creative writing. I do some TV movie stuff. I do a lot of sitting around and doing nothing. But yeah, basically I'm working on another book, but really slowly. So yeah, just trying to get by as a writer is pretty much my bio at this point.
I love it. Well, we're so honored to have you here to talk about the book.
Yeah,
So,
I'm excited. This is so cool. Thanks for having me here.
yeah. Okay. Well, one thing we committed to do, we wanted to be really inclusive here. We wanted people to come and partake in this discussion, whether or not they finish the book. And maybe some people haven't even started the book, which I want to just put out there is perfectly okay. We are not going to. I would say there's maybe one kind of big surprise in the book. We're not really going to get into what that is, but for the most part, we're just going to really discuss it and hopefully bring context if you have read the book. And if you haven't, I know you will want to pick it up right away when we are done speaking. So, well, Crissy, since we heard from Tara and she talked a lot about having grown up near water, why don't you start by telling us a little bit more about the setting? I will admit I had to Google Winter Island because I wasn't sure if it was real or not. It is indeed fictional, but it's near where you grew up, and I almost felt like Winter Island was almost like a character in and of itself. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So actually, I think as I started writing this, I was certainly thinking, about grief a lot. But I certainly was drawn to the idea of place, which is something I love in other people's works and other books. And so I grew up here in the LA area, and my dad lived on the Balboa Peninsula, which is Newport Beach, California, which is kind of a weird place. It's like south of LA in Orange County. And so it's a literal peninsula, and he lived on this peninsula my whole life. And it was such a weird place to sort of spend time and grow up because you're surrounded by water on three sides. There's sort of one way in, one way out. It's a very like touristy sort of summer trap town. And so it was just really interesting kind of being sort of working class people on this little tiny blip of land with all of these sort of vacation rich houses and wealthy people. And so it kind of stemmed from just memories of that. And so the setting to me was really important. And so, yeah, it's not a real place. Winter Island is not real. Although I think there are now on Instagram, people have tagged me in things over the last year. It's been so interesting. I think there's a Winter Island somewhere off the coast of Maine, and then maybe somewhere in like Ireland or something. But I was really drawn to this idea of, a place that I knew so well, and then a place just sort of being pummeled by weather all of the time. So yeah, not a real place, but feels real in my mind at this point. So
Yeah. Since you touched on this, having like all of these really fancy homes where you grew up, but being like a working class family, let's get into that a little bit, because this is certainly a part of the narrative. It's certainly a part of the story.
yeah, I think
one of the most common Zoom issues. The free.
Oh, I'm like, am I frozen? I think you froze for a second, Crissy. Are you back?
She's frozen again.
I always have that moment of, am I frozen or are you frozen?
If all else fails, Alicia can just teach us a bar class.
Oh, goodness gracious. No. Okay, here she is. I think she's back. Oh no, she says 1 second.
can you?
a little bit frozen. I have
Yeah.
changed locations to be
Okay.
bright. So let's see.
I was just waiting for Crissy, just started to answer a question and then she froze. Look how patient we have all become, right? 1 year into Zooming for everything, work, social, all of it, culture.
I've really kind
You're
of gotten
doing-
used to this. I don't know
Yeah.
how I'm going to interact with people again.
I think it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
And Alicia, you do your bar classes via Zoom, right? There's nothing in
We
person.
do. Yes, we've been using Zoom for a year. We are just about to start doing Zoom with actual people in the room as well. Okay, I think Crissy's back. There she is. She's waving at us. It looks like she's in a new location.
Okay.
Yeah,
We all did it. We all did it.
that's okay. You
I'll
got to
mute
do what you got to
myself
do. Okay. Crissy, can you hear me? Oh, you're giving me a thumbs up. All right, we lost her again. So I'll do the little commercial breaks. Yeah, I was just saying that we've been Zooming for a year now, fitness classes, but we're about to learn how to do Zoom, but also with people in the room. You won't be able to see those people, but they'll be in the room. So, you know, learning something new always. Okay,
Oh,
Crissy
Crissy
says
says she's almost back. Waiting
Okay.
on pins and needles.
Okay.
You know, I'll say while we're waiting for her, I read the jacket of the book, and I was not prepared for what the book ended up being. I thought it was going to be a lot more just kind of straightforward, troubled wedding, something mysterious, but I didn't think it was going to span pretty much the lifetime of the main character. So I was pleasantly surprised when I dove in and thought, oh, this is so much more than what I assumed it was going to be. So I liked that, the way that she wrote
For sure.
that. Sorry, I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat at the same time.
Okay, I'm going to tell you something very interesting. And we can ask Crissy about this too, but this cover, I'm holding the book, this cover was so beautiful. And I was very curious about where the artwork came from. And it turns out this is an Ernst Henkel painting, I believe. I think I'm saying that right. So essentially you can get the creative rights to famous paintings that I guess live in some kind of archive. Well, you can get the details on that. But anyway, I just thought this was a stunning cover, and wanted to know if like she had worked with an artist to create this or where this came from. So it was an existing piece of art. Pretty cool. Oh, here, you want to see the book cover? Yeah, there it is. Can you see that? So I'll get real close here so you can see kind of the detail. There's all of these, you know, sea creatures.
That's cool.
Really beautiful.
So does part of the book, and I'm sorry, I haven't read it yet because I didn't think I was going to make it tonight. And so I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for hosting us, Proper Topper, and you, Alicia. So does part of the book take place in the ocean or in the sea?
Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit. But yes, it takes place. So Winter Island is this little island off of LA.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of the book is about sort of the weather around the island, the storms, the sea life, and you know, the folks who live in the town, the working class people. All of their work is really around the, you know, it's fishing and it's all that kind of, yeah.
Okay. I was thinking it was an island and a lake, but it was an island in the ocean.
No, yes, absolutely. That's a great question. Okay.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yay!
So I'm sorry.
Oh, but you're back now. So
I'm in another room
now.
You know what? It's really windy here in LA, like crazy windy. And so if I cut out, You guys were doing I could hear you the whole time. It was
Oh, you
infuriating.
could.
Yeah.
Okay. So we were talking about, of course, the cover,
Yeah.
and I was giving them the detail. I wondered if you had like had an artist do this. So
Yeah.
will you just talk a little bit about that? Because I tried to give them the background, but I feel like you could probably do a better job.
No, you did a pretty good job. Yeah. So
Okay.
you're right. It is a painting from the 1800s. And I had, they sort of how all book publishing works is the art director sort of lays out, 5 options or whatever of art. And I was in New York at the time, so I got to see it. And I think unanimously, we all knew that that was the right cover. There was another one that was sort of the underbelly of a whale, which looked weirdly phallic and weird. And we all were like, no, that's not the one. So that one kind of stood out and we knew. So I've been really lucky with the cover. And I think maybe it was Tara who said the book jacket, somebody said the book jacket copy, about it being about a wedding and things is
yeah.
I think sort of the way they draw you in, but I agree. It's a little bit darker than that and does span over a really long period of time. But like many, many years of childhood through adulthood. So it's interesting to hear people say that because I agree.
Right. So right before we got cut off and had all of that, I was asking you about this notion of being like, having grown up as sort of like a working class family, but with the wealthy, and you were starting to answer that. Why don't you go ahead and answer that? And then I want to get right into kind of the ebbs and flows of time in the narrative. Like we're having a little bit of the ebb and flow of our conversation here because of Zoom, but so we can maybe talk about that next. Yeah.
Can I also interject just really quickly to say before we get too far along, maybe if Crissy could do a reading, just so those who haven't read it could kind of get a feel for. I'm not sure. Or did you have that scheduled later? I'm sorry.
I do have her plan to read a certain portion about marriage and love, but there was a couple other things I wanted to dig into first.
That's better because I changed rooms, so I'm going to have my husband bring down the book.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
So just about the working class stuff. I think it's really interesting in any place you grow up, but certainly in LA. There's, in New York too, where it's just the other place I've lived. There's so much money compared to like a lot of maybe rural places. I mean, you guys are in DC, you know this very well as well. But where I grew up, it was like a vacation town and people would come and spend, all of this money where we had no money and we were kind of going from house to house. And I just think, I had to write about it. It felt like sorry, hold on. Can you ring my computer charger too? Sorry. We also got this. It's just something I think about even on a daily basis, even as an adult with a job. I think money is a driving force, especially when you grow up not having any. So I always think it's funny too in books. I feel like, people do this with race too. Most books, people just, if a white person is writing it, it's a white book or whatever. But same with class, like you just assume, right, whatever your own bias is to things. And so in literature, I feel like no one really ever addresses class. So for me, it was definitely something I wanted to have the stark contrast between a really like rich family and a really sort of poor family, just like fishermen living off the land type stuff. So I knew from the beginning that was something I wanted to write about.
Right. Okay. Well, it was really beautifully done. Really beautifully done. So I know not everybody here has read the book, but what I will say is the book is not laid out in a linear fashion. It doesn't start in the beginning and end at the end. And it took me a moment to realize what was happening. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, I see what's happened here. So my first question for you is, I'd love to know, when you planned the book and wrote the book, did you write sort of the storylines in order and then chop them up? Or like, how did you actually decide to present the book? How did you write the book?
Yeah, I can actually, for those who are just starting the book or haven't read it yet, I can show you that there's this table of contents here, which is a little daunting maybe, but these are sort of the order of the book. And actually, if you turn the book on its side, if you were to trace this with a pencil, it's kind of a tide chart. So it's sort of the, fun, right?
Oh,
it's sort of the ebbs and flows of time. Yeah. So it is a little, you know, we probably should have put like a disclaimer, I feel like, in the beginning there. But so I did not write this in any kind of order. It actually became, it was more like a puzzle. So what I ended up writing first, so the book is, there are a whole bunch of memories of a childhood here with a father, and which informs Evie, the main character, as she gets older and she's about to get married, and she's sort of reflecting on this kind of like messed up childhood on this island, and, you know, trying to figure out, has she ever learned how to love? Can she be married? Does she know how to do this? So those reflections with the father were what I wrote first. And the first thing I wrote in this book was, I wrote it as a short story, was the first memory with the father of a tsunami coming to the island. And that was just kind of based on like weird memories I had pieced together with my own father, and then just sort of fictionalized in this kind of fantastical way. And I had sent it to a friend who's an editor because I wanted to publish it as a short story. And she was like, I think there's like a lot more here. So I just kind of kept writing these little vignettes of the father. And when I finished the father sections, I thought, wait, there's more here. This is a whole life. And so then I kind of started building the other pieces. There's also in the present tense an experience before the wedding with this sort of long lost absent mother. And that's what I wrote last. So coming up with how to structure it all, because you're right, it kind of starts in one place and ends on the same sort of day. And then you have a whole life in the middle, which is kind of nuts. But yeah, it was a puzzle for me as well. I wasn't sure, you know, how do you tell the story of a person's life? Is it linear? The way we remember things isn't linear. The way we remember our own memories are skewed. So I was thinking a lot about time and playing with that. So I have noticed that, you know, if you're a person who loves like mysteries or like love stories and you love straightforward novels, this is a bit of a, like you said, at first you're kind of like, wait, what am I reading here? So I'm happy that you enjoyed it by the time you got to the end, because it is, yeah, it's a little, I guess, disjointed would be a word we could use.
Yeah, disjointed, but in a thoughtful way. I mean, disjointed can mean a lot of things, but clearly you put a lot of attention and care into how it was organized, which really made me wonder, like, how you actually developed these stories and how you wrote them. So it sounds like you really kind of went like layer by layer and kept going deeper and deeper until you could, piece it together. The other thing, especially for those who haven't read it, is, you know, the way the contents read, it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we're kind of like over the course of, you know, like a long weekend sort of, and then you're like, wait a minute, but we've just traveled like decades,
right.
You know, throughout that. The other interesting choice I think that you made, and I'd love to hear you talk about how you came to this choice, was the main chunks of the book are in first person, but these little vignettes you have that are, you know, about the particular whales are in second person. And so talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so Evie, the main character, is a teacher, and she teaches sort of about marine biology, and she works at this kind of made up place that I guess in my mind might have been the Monterey Bay Aquarium, place I love so much, and also follow them on Twitter. It's so entertaining, side note. But so I was thinking of this idea of, you know, when I'm planning a lesson, right, there's a question we're going to ask and a question we're going to answer as a class. And hopefully as the teacher, I can bring everyone to that answer. And so I can show you what that looks like. It sort of looks like a paper in school. Here's the sort of cetacean whale that we're going to be looking at. But then the answers are sort of all of Evie's own thoughts about herself. And the reason they're in second person, so the you, right? She's saying, you know, I'm going to read a section actually from a whale part, so you'll hear that. But
yes,
you know, the sort of second person, you know, your father will do this, you will feel this way. I think of it was more of like a teaching moment. So the idea of her teaching a class, but really she's telling herself these things, these emotional truths that she can't admit to herself. And there's something about writing it in that I point of view versus, to me, that second person point of view that just felt a little even more tragic. Of it's really hard, I think, for humans to say what we really want and need to ourselves sometimes. And I think she's a regular person who's trying to figure out love and sort of has to shield it from herself in this way. So the second person pieces all are answering questions about whales, but of course the answers are all emotional questions about love. Yeah, so the second person was actually really fun to write, and I wrote those very quickly. If I would love to write a whole book in second person, but I don't think anyone on earth would publish that or read it. But I really like that second person a lot. There's not many books like that, like the whole book, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so you brought up, so do you want to read a little bit? Do you want to
Yeah.
read just one of those sections so people can hear
Yeah.
the tone and kind of understand?
Yeah, I'm just going to read a little piece from the very center of the book, which is the center of kind of a breaking relationship, where Evie as an adult is trying to figure out if she can move forward as an adult with all of this sort of like childhood trauma. And so this is one of those second person pieces. It's on page 133. It's called Whale Fall. Carcass of a cetacean. Question. What happens when something dies? In the very beginning, when I'm showing him the island, I tell Liam I'm a mess. I tell him I don't smoke, and then I smoke a cigarette and later a joint right in front of him, and so he does too. In that beginning, I do most of the talking because I fear if there is any silence, any space between, he'll leave. I tell him I have been abandoned. He says he has been left too. I say that my father is dead, that my life isn't complicated, but it isn't easy. He asks for another cigarette. I can't remember if I was being myself, but then who else could I have been? Because it all came out so fast and there was no turning back. I pretend that I am at ease and I know that I'm good at telling half-hearted jokes. I think of laying it all out. The markings on my heart will make it easier for us later, if there will be a later. That if I say all the bad things up front, I won't ever have to say them again. We are both silent even when I'm loud, terrified to say things we don't want to hear ourselves. Terrified that if we say it once, everything will open up, will be cracked apart. And what if there's no way to seal it all back up? We say this without saying it. I say all the things that don't matter. I tell the history of the sea. I take him to the lighthouse because I imagine that is what a romantic person would do, but it's cold and wet and there, and he slips and smacks his tailbone at the top of the stone steps. I try to help him to his feet and he lets me, and I pull him up with my hands, and I wonder if I have ever let anyone help me. We sit on a bench on a windy bluff, and we see the whales migrating south, and in my entire life on that island, I have never seen a whale from there. I want to tell him that it's a myth that it's so easy to see whales passing, even though that's everything we tell the tourists. He finally starts talking about nothing and everything, about the next boat, so that I can't decide if the distant blowing of the whale matters like I thought it would. He asks if he can hold my hand, and when our fingers lock, there is a rush, and I can't tell what's real. He tells me he wants to see me again and again. I go home that night, and I cry and I cry. So we are silent for most of our first year, talking only about paint colors, future vacations. I know of his mother's broken heart and his dad who left him for the South Seas and later for death, and his brothers who fear the ocean. He knows of my mother, of Mary, then Tommy, and I try to tell him about my father, but we never really say what any of it means to us. He's easy to love. He's the kind of person who takes care of things, who doesn't tell me to quit smoking, who will just do the laundry if it needs to be done. Later, he reveals that before me, he felt alone, and so it's enough for me to say I will marry him. He's slow to tell me what he feels, but sometimes I know it when I look at the top of his hands, because there is regret and the tinges of darkness. They are bruised, they are salt-crusted, they are always nicked. He won't treat them, and instead his hands are covered in bubbles of brown scabs, and he just lets them heal on their own. Then little skinless white scars appear until the sun has covered them again. I keep trying with all of the talking at him, telling him the things I want, because for the first time someone is asking. At first, it's so easy to tell him I love him. At first, it's never easy to tell him why. When he moves into my bungalow on Fairylands, I watch him sleep and I make a list of the reasons I love him. And most of them are petty, but it's that for once I feel like I am alive to feel the extraordinary weight of joy. I'm too afraid to ask if he feels this too. Before we marry, we must talk about things like what kind of car we will buy, where we will live, if we should get a dog. But it must have been me mostly talking. We decide that he will take months-long charters out to sea because it's what he wants and what he knows, and we aren't sure we could do this any other way. We don't want to be alone. We say that if he meets a woman or I find a man, it won't mean anything. It won't break us, but we promise to be loyal on this island, say nothing will ruin us. At night, I try to keep him awake until we are exhausted, and I ask him for 100 ways to tell me we'll do whatever it takes to stay in love. A scab tugs on the sheet. Before he leaves one last time before our wedding, we hike back up to the lighthouse to clean the thick lenses that protect the lamps. He reminds me of the time he slipped. He tells me he knew he already loved me then. Then the lights are brighter. Still, he tells me that when he's away, he feels gone. The distance, he says, reminds him of the distance between all things, and he fears he will push me away. I tell him I fear the same thing. We wonder if our same fears will make us last forever, wonder who will die first. He tells me he'll be back again and again, and that the next time he returns, we'll get married on the beach, even if we're different people by then, even if there is rain or something worse. He says he'll love every adaptation of me. We'll build around us. The carcass of a whale falls slowly to the ocean floor and forms complex, localized ecosystems after death. It will sustain deep-sea organisms for decades, maybe forever. Scientists call this a whale fall.
Beautiful.
Thanks. I realized that wasn't in second person though. Sorry, guys.
Well, yeah, that one wasn't, but a lot of them were.
Yeah, actually, that's the only one that's not. And as I started reading, I remembered that.
Right. I want to spend a bit of time on this relationship. The relationships in this book are really complex.
Mm-hmm.
So Evie, there's a number of places where she says, I was never a little girl. I'm not a daughter. There's a lot of abandonment in her life. Her mother comes and goes and comes and goes with no rhyme or reason. Her father is living this life of selling drugs and doing drugs and a lot of time high, and in a way also leaving her over and over again, right? And I thought it was interesting that she chose a man who also leaves her over and over again for his work, right? Because he's out on charter boats, but but maybe because she didn't know anything else.
Yeah, I'm excited you brought that up. Not many people say that, but it's absolutely intentional. I think, when we, at least for me, there's so much of my life actually that I don't want to be like my parents. And then I find myself in adulthood, repeating things or doing things. And I'm like, wait a minute, I told myself this was something I wasn't going to do. And so that was something I was just interested in. I mean, even if it's like the way I make, tea, like my mom would make tea, right? It doesn't even have to be anything crazy, but the things we've picked up are in our lives. And I think it absolutely makes sense that she would want to marry or be in this kind of dysfunctional-ish relationship with Liam because he leaves all the time and that's all she knows. That makes her feel comfortable in a weird way. I think, that trauma of abandonment is something sadly she's so used to. And I think that part of the book is about her trying to overcome that, right? Of like, how can I make this marriage work? They have kind of a non-traditional marriage. And she has sort of a non-traditional life in the way of, family structures or whatever. But I think it makes sense she would fall in love with someone like this who does leave, for weeks at a time or months at a time because she's used to being alone and she's used to being left sort of behind. So it absolutely, I think, is an intentional thing that she has to, in the course of this time in this book, has to, overcome and figure out what she really wants, because she's quite unhappy, I'd say, in a lot of this book.
Right. Well, she hasn't had examples. Like she hasn't seen an example of how to be a wife, how to be a woman,
right? How
to, not certainly not how to be a mother, although she becomes a mother figure, right, to Tommy. So interesting how she sort of finds her way. There was one thing that stuck out to me here. I'm now going to read just a little bit from your book here because I think this is an interesting passage. So what has happened is there's been an argument between Liam and Evie because they've made this agreement which was in the passage you read about, you know, when he's away, when they're apart, whatever happens, they're not going to talk about it. And they really haven't committed to monogamy, but he ends up telling her that he has been unfaithful. And she says, but I'm not angry that he's touched another woman with the same hands that rest upon my hip in the night, the hands that scrub my back in the shower. I'm angry that he's told me and broken his vow to keep me away from that kind of hurt. We said, what happens to us while we are away does not belong to us, because we never agreed to be faithful, but we did agree to keep each other from ruin. And he essentially comes back to her and says that the way he was hurt is that she never really needed him. And that hurt him. He wanted to be needed, but it seemed that she couldn't take the risk to need somebody, because the people she always needed as a young person were never there for her. They were constantly disappointing her and leaving her and not listening to her. So he says he wishes she was easier to love.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I think one of the things whenever I'm writing anything, I'm trying to answer a question. I think that's all of life, right? Or all of these little questions and big questions that as humans, we're just, I don't know, trying to figure out. And I think love, whether you've had a totally great set of parents and you had all these great examples, or like Evie, you had these like horrible parents who, you know, tried, but really didn't give her, like you said, a solid foundation to maybe understand what she really needed, what love was, what it could be. But I think it's relatable in a way to feel that you do wish you were easier, right? I don't think, you know, love gets easier, especially over time and all of these things. But I was writing this book before I was married, and I never thought I would get married. I have a lot of the same issues Evie does in some ways. So, and for me, marriage has gotten so much easier and great in a lot of ways. I've been married 5 years now. But I was writing this before I was getting married, and I was like, oh my God, like how do we do this? And I think, you know, I didn't have as crazy as a life as Evie did, but I think those are all real questions we ask as humans, of like monogamy and foreverness and eternity. And, you know, those are really big things to commit to and really joyous and wonderful. But I think they also can be really scary. And I think for her, the betrayal isn't necessarily that there's an affair, because they have sort of this, you know, that she can't commit, you know, she's messed up. So they have sort of this openish marriage. I think the betrayal is the trust that he's told her, knowing it would hurt her. And now for her, she feels very, you know, like she can't trust him anymore. So I think the betrayal isn't necessarily just the affair. It's that, you know, she can't be needed. She's so used to being on her own, almost like a feral cat or something, that, you know, sharing a life with someone sounds insane to her.
Right. You brushed, I'm not gonna be able to find it in the book because I wasn't smart enough to put a little tab on it, but there is a point in the book where Evie, so I'll give a little background here. Evie has a very good friend she grows up with named Rook, and Rook has this little boy. And Rook is also leaving all the time. Rook is also kind of disappearing. So Evie really becomes kind of the guardian and mother figure for this little boy. And there's a point in the book where Evie is marveling at the boy's love of her that is for no reason. There's no qualifiers. Right. He just loves her so wholly and fully. Oh, it makes me emotional thinking about that.
I know. Well, unconditional love, right? Unconditional love is like the most crazy human thing we have, and we have it as children to our parental figures, our parents, whoever, you know, that you had for that. And I think, I think that's a really interesting and beautiful relationship of maybe not being a maternal mother, but having mother figures, which is something that Evie obviously needed and, you know, wanted in her life. Right.
You know, it's interesting. My own mother lost her mother when she was 3. So she was one of 7 children. She was the 5th of 7 children, and the mother died at 3, giving birth to the 8th child. So she left behind all of these kids. They were age 11 to the littlest one was 9 months old.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking as a child, like, how does my mother know how to be a mother?
Yeah.
And she didn't have a mother. and I have a wonderful mother, and she definitely knew what she was doing. But I kind of I had that was reminiscent of the same sort of idea as I'm observing Evie
Mhm.
developing this beautiful relationship with this boy.
Yeah.
You know, like where did that come from? I guess it's like innate.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing, you know, of who we sort of, yeah, like choose, you know, how do we have these instincts? Is it being a woman? Is it biology? Is it learned? Like, you know, I think it's all of the things sort of
Yeah.
make these mother figures. But
Yeah.
I'm an only child, and I think I've always wanted brothers and sisters. My mom's one of 6, and my dad has a twin brother. So I've seen these very close relationships. So I think for me, even in writing this, the idea of having, you know, a younger brother or a child or something that's like, you know, you get to be like an aunt or a big sister or mother
Yeah.
figure is always something that's been just personally appealing that I didn't have. So I'm glad you liked that part.
I really did. One other thing I really want to make sure to discuss, because it's such a huge theme in the book, is, you know, they're on an island, so weather is a big deal, and the weather is constantly changing. It is
Yeah.
dramatic, and Evie's life kind of weaves in and out of the weather patterns, or at least the stories
Mhm.
we're hearing from her very much. So let's talk a little bit about that and this kind of like climate change
Yeah.
metaphor.
So I mean, growing up here in LA, everyone thinks we don't have seasons. We kind of don't. We have like windy season right now, but you know, it's growing up on the beach, you can see erosion happening. Everything catches on fire here. Every year it gets worse and worse. Like my whole life has been kind of being trapped by sort of the elements. And I know that like California is beautiful, and it is, but like there's some bad things happening here like all the time, especially if you live on the coast. So I was thinking so much about that. And as I was piecing together the dad story and the childhood memories, I was thinking again of how memory is skewed and how we remember things of our parents are based on kind of maybe what we needed versus what really happened. And I was thinking that, you know, each dad section is founded by a piece of weather. So the memory is like a tsunami or a hurricane or whatever the thing is, right? That's kind of where the memory is shaped from, except it's an emotional piece to life, but to her life. But yeah, I think, you know, climate change is something I think about all the time. And I just think it's so funny that, I mean, I think people think about it, but it's something I'm really interested in writing about all the time. The new work I'm working on now has a lot to do with it. And I think that this book, though subtly, is certainly about an island that experiences all types of weather. And why would you experience all types of weather? Is because the earth is like burning down. So I think for me, it was just like a personal thing I wanted to do, that while we're all living our lives and figuring out navigating our emotional lives, right? The world is sort of doing this at the same time. So yeah, certainly interested in climate change, and definitely based a lot of the memories around those ideas and the changing in atmosphere and environment.
Yeah, it was woven together, I thought, so beautifully.
Okay.
Really, really great.
Should we open it up for questions maybe?
Yes,
I was just gonna say, we have in our last like 10, 20 minutes, if let's open it up to questions.
Yeah, okay. I was trying to scan and see if there were some things that came in. I know, Anna, you had said earlier you want to talk about kind of the ebbs and flows of time in the narrative, kind of like the tide. We talked a little bit about that. If anyone else has any other questions, please put them in the chat. Yeah, we'd love to.
Well, this is interesting, Jenny, what you said. Her father is so loving, but so awful. Same with her mother, so many contradictions. Yeah, I agree. I think there's so many moments of love between the father and the daughter, right? Like it's kind of magical to have that be seen like that by a parent. But then also her dad's super messed up, and there are times when he's just leaving her, and I think, you know, that's very confusing to her. But I don't know, I just think that's kind of true of life. In a lot of relationships, they're not perfect all of the time, and you have sort of the ebbs and flows of these types of things, which is what she's navigating in her, you know, concocted marriage idea. So yeah, I have sympathy for the father character sometimes, and then other times I think he's just a really terrible person. So
Ooh, okay, there's a little bit of a spoiler in here, but we can dig into this. I want to ask you a real quick question though. The dad, does he not have a name? Is he?
No, not named.
He's unnamed.
He's unnamed, and
Why
so
did
is
you
mom.
choose to unname? Yeah, they didn't have names.
They didn't have
Mom
names.
and dad.
I almost felt like, I don't think these are universal parents, although interestingly enough, it's been great to meet people on book tour who also had alcoholic parents or abandonment, you know, it's been nice to have people who related to this in that particular way. Obviously you don't have to enjoy the book, but that's been nice to meet a few people along the way. But I felt like when I made names for them, it didn't feel as universal. In your head, calling them dad and mom kind of made you feel a little more sympathetic in the way you would call your own parents, not by their name. And so I don't know. I did want there to be some sympathetic moments with them, and it felt easier if they were just mom and dad, you know, versus a character or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. So Marianne says, what about Brooke and her dad? Okay. So for those who haven't read the book or those who are still reading, you might want to plug your ears here. I thought this was a little bit of a
yeah. Well, I won't even give too much away, but
okay.
Certainly I will say there's a lot. The book for me is very much about betrayal. And there are a lot of betrayals. And I was interested in this idea of like measuring betrayal. So there's little betrayals all the time, like her dad doesn't show up for something, or you know, whatever. And then there's like this thing where her husband sleeps with someone else. And then there's this thing where her dad has a weird relationship with her friend. And, you know, how do you measure these betrayals? Because if you add them all up with her dad or her mom, they suck. They're terrible, right? And I think having these big betrayals versus the small betrayals was something I was kind of interested in. So that building that relationship between all of these people, there's only, you know, what, 5 main characters in the book. So 6. I just thought I wanted to push that betrayal even further, right? And when she's thinking about, can I forgive my husband for sleeping with someone? Am I even sure I wanted these rules? Well, she's already forgiven a lot of people in her life, including her dad and her friend and all of these things. So I think the gist there is like, yeah, she knows how to forgive, and she needs to figure out what she wants, type thing.
Yeah. The betrayal forgiveness cycle is not always the same in these situations. As you said, some of the betrayals are little, some of them are big. And some of the forgiveness, it seems like, isn't complete. It's, you know, a work in progress, right? It's not fully realized. And Marianne says, I can't decide if she's forgiving or
I can't either. There are times where, you know, even having been on tour with this for a year and talking about the book, it's so frustrating in a lot of ways to see people behave this way, right? You just want to be like, either leave these people and move on with your life. Like, what is the drawback to, you know, her father or this life? Like, she doesn't need to do this. She could just move on with her life. So I agree. I think when writing it, I like complicated characters and complex people. And I don't think in real life, things are as black and white as we think if this happened to me, I would do this, or, you know, if I got cheated on, this is what I would do. And then like, when you get in these situations, like, that's like never what really happens. Everything's gray, and you just, you know, got to go to therapy or suffer through it, or like whatever you got to do. But so I think, you know, deliberately she's both, right? She kind of is a doormat sometimes. And then also times we see this resilience in her that I'm like, I couldn't do those things, you know? So yeah, I think maybe she's both.
So yeah, so fully human. Well, there's a comment here from Jenny, and then a question I want to address. The comment was, all parents abandon or betray their children at some point. It's not necessary to be an addict to behave that way, which I really think just speaks to the humanity of being a parent, right? Like, parenting is so hard. And then Jenny's question is there something about Evie that makes her comfortable with self-compassion, or oops, it just jumped here, or does she blame herself for her parents' behavior?
I like that question. There's a scene where Evie and her father are homeless, and they hike to the top of this mountain, and her dad tries to make it fun, like, oh, we're camping. But really they just like are in between places and have nowhere to go. And he's like running from bad people. And when I was writing that scene, I thought it was important that the dad was very sorry for how he behaved, and sort of he was the one that felt ashamed. and that shame, which is so sad in any kind of addict behavior, and sometimes unnecessary. But also, you know, I think for any parent, right, whatever choices you make, I don't know, it's never perfect. Maybe some of you have perfect parents, but there's always some things, right? So I don't think Evie blames herself, and I think that's why she's able to forgive. I think there's a lot of regret that she has. Maybe she would have handled things differently or left earlier, but I don't think she blames herself, and I think that's because I hope it came through that her dad didn't necessarily let her do that.
Yeah. Yeah. My parents certainly are not perfect. They're wonderful.
I don't
They're
think
wonderful people,
right.
but they're not perfect. And you know, that
Right.
gives me
Mine too.
comfort because yeah, I mean, I'm doing my best here as a parent, but you know,
It's hard.
rough,
I can't
people. It's
even.
rough.
Yeah. Doesn't sound easy. I'm not a parent.
It's not
specifically because
easy.
it sounds very hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Anna says here, oh, I love this, Anna. Well, I don't know if this is Anna or Tara. I'm not sure. You're both named Proper Topper, so I'm not sure who wrote this. It says, the scene where she's wearing her first two-piece bathing suit and her father is concerned she'll be sexualized, but then he's got her like peddling drugs on the beach.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, those are two separate issues, though. A lot of people have brought this up to me. Also, I will say, he's just selling weed, which, by the way, is totally legal now here in California. But
it is, yes, here too.
Yeah. But no, I agree. I think, I mean, again, I grew up, my parents divorced when I was like 4 or something. And I spent so much time with my dad as an only child, and poor guy, like I grew up in bars, basically, like the book. And he would never, I mean, he was like, you don't understand what men think, right? And I'm like 16 or something in like a bikini top showing up to the pizza shop. And he's like, no, like, and so I did actually learn that men were terrible from an early age. And I'm kind of grateful for that, to be honest. So it was definitely something that kept coming through in the book of like, being sexualized in a young age. And actually a lot of people bring up that scene because it's the first time she's wearing a tampon and she gets on a bike, and you know, it's just the whole thing, you know, of that age and remembering back to that and just dealing with that, and you're with your dad and you're, you know, it's just like a really kind of funny messed up moment. But I think it was important for the dad's character to think he was teaching her lessons, right? Which is kind of insane because he's like kind of a loser drug dealing dude that couldn't even keep a home together for them. But he has these moments of like, well, you should not be wearing this in front of people. Like he's a hypocrite in so many ways, right? So I think that was it's kind of comical in a way to me that he would have to give her all these life lessons when like, what can he really teach her? This guy is kind of a mess.
Yeah. That whole tampon bikini thing is so cringy. Oh, it brought me right back. Horrible days.
Terrible.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So Allie has a question here. Allie, I kind of had the same thought. So, you know, when you were talking earlier about Evie, I wondered, I'm like, are we done with Evie? Are we going to hear more from Evie? So her question is, do you have any stories you wrote, or have you given thought to other characters' perspectives? Like, is it possible maybe we'll see more like from, you know, the parents or Brooke, or, you know, from a different perspective?
Yeah, well, I can say, I don't think I can say too much about it, but we are making this a movie. So there will be, you know, other points of views, which has been really fun to write because I did have a lot of, when I was doing this, I had a lot of, just like what you're saying, Allie, like I had kind of played with things from Rook's point of view. And, but I think for me, the book made sense in the sort of first person, although I don't think I'll ever write a first person novel again because you're so limited. I can't go anywhere, right? But because the structure was so crazy in a way, it felt insane to bring in this structure and then adding, you know, other points of views. So I played around with it for sure, but I think Rook is a really compelling person. And certainly in the film version we're working on, she's a lot more kind of involved because people really liked her. She's super messed up too. She's a very interesting person. I agree. So it's been kind of fun to play around with like her point of view.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait for the movie. I feel like we should all meet back and, you know,
yeah, right?
compare movie, book, get our popcorn. Yeah, totally. Oh my goodness. I love it. I love it. Okay. So Marianne's got a comment here. You know, I'm just going to say, so the book I read immediately before this book was Transcendent Kingdom. which has themes of abandonment and addiction as well.
Yep.
Although there's multiple levels of abandonment, but it's really more the father. So
Right.
Marianne says, what's up with many modern novels that have mothers that abandon their families? She says she's not a mother. Yeah, Dutch House. Yeah, read that one. I read abandonment there. Yeah.
I think, you know, can you guys hear me? Did I just go out? No? Good. Okay. I know. I think that's like kind of a popular, like, I feel like all of us millennial writers are publishing now, and it seems to be a weird, although Ann Patchett, no. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's just a popular thing. I think as it happens a lot. And I think even if your parents, like the other comment before, your parent doesn't have to be an addict. They also can emotionally abandon you, right? Like you might grow up in a house with parents who like you never spoke to your dad, or you talk to him once a week, or like, you know, there are a lot of ways to abandon people. I think that's a pretty common, unfortunately, thread. I haven't read Transcendent Kingdom yet. I want to read it. I've heard like so many good things about that book.
Yeah, there's a lot there. It's
I just haven't had the like heart yet, you know, to go in.
My goodness, if I could tell you the stack of books I have that I'm like not in the right place for this now, like it is for later. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Anna.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm just going to say that the missing mother is like not a new concept, because all of the fairy tales, you know, have the missing.
Yeah.
And when I was reading like the 90th story to Lucy when she was little that had the missing mom or the dead mom, I looked at her and she looked sad, and I said, "Oh, sweetie, don't worry. Are you worried that you know, I'm not going anywhere?" And she said, she looked at me, she was like 3. She looked at me and she said, "Well, you are pretty old." I said, in a very adult manner, "Who told you that?"
Oh my God.
Yeah. She said, "Daddy." So, okay, there. I'll mute myself.
Also, Walt Disney. I'm a crazy Disneyland fan. I grew up right down the street from Disneyland. I'm one of those like adult weird people with no children who loves Disneyland, but mostly because it's like a weird trip to me and I like going. But Walt Disney lost his mother early on, and it shaped like his whole building that weird place. Like I think it's something that like abandonment, whether it's death or like we were saying emotional, is like a pretty big childhood trauma for people. So I think if you have that, which I lost my dad at 26, so I wasn't a kid, but certainly like messes with your head a little bit there. So I think I think maybe if you're an artist, that's just the thing you have to work out, you know, your whole art journey, maybe.
You know, I feel like in this last year, because we've been in a pandemic year and, you know, all incredibly stressed and there's chaos and uncertainty. I've heard a lot of times, like we go back to childhood trauma during times like that, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder if, because you are a creator, because your art comes from that place of vulnerability, right? Like so much out there comes from, you know, the wounds. Right.
Yeah, I think for me, the quarantine has been weird because I actually got vaccinated. Yay. So I'm very personally excited about that because I'm really high risk. So I've had a really kind of slow year where I had friends who were still doing, you know, everybody had to assess their own risk, but I was being pretty safe. So it was pretty depressing. And I live with my husband. Thank God I live with a person. That's been really helpful. But I was not feeling creative until I didn't start really working on new stuff until like a few months ago. I was feeling just so drained. And I think, yeah, for any trauma you have, and when you're in a traumatic experience, right, we don't even know what's all going to happen after all of it. We're still in it. So interesting what'll happen in the next 10 years to the kids that were on Zoom, to the people that were alone, blah, 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 people that got COVID, all of these things. I don't think we've sorted that out, but I certainly didn't feel creative, and I did a lot of like other artist talks, and some people were just cranking away, you know, they were like making all this stuff, and I was like, oh my God, I could barely read a book for the first 6 months. I did watch a lot of TV though, which was kind of great. But you know, yeah, I wasn't feeling that creative, and I think it is easy with any kind of trauma to fall into, you know, kind of trap. I've been in therapy, thank God, for so many years. So I feel like I certainly had the tools to like get through this. So I wasn't too worried about myself. But I think for everybody, I mean, we could all say this, whether you had abandonment issues or not, or whatever, like this has been such a long, never ending year that maybe is starting to get a little brighter finally.
So long. I'm glad you brought up your writing or lack thereof in this last year, because I think, you know, with so many people who normally work in office situations or work elsewhere suddenly at home, like you have the kind of job where you write from wherever you are, right? Whether it's home or a coffee shop or whatever it is for you. So it's interesting to hear that, you know, how it's changed for you.
Well, it's also been interesting. I'll just say this really quick. My husband he works in like sales. So he's like a person that goes to an office. He's talking to people all day. And we just recently moved because we basically lived in the smallest, most hilarious, tiny 1-bedroom, mostly studio apartment. And he's on phone calls all day. And so for me, I've been working from home for quite some time, and I've always been a freelancer. So I sometimes go into offices, sometimes don't. I have projects, whatever. It's been harder on him, I think, because his whole everything shifted. He never thought he would work from home. He never wanted to be a freelancer. And I think for him, that interaction has sucked. We're like, I'm an only child. I swear I could live in a hole and I would be fine. I'm just used to being alone. I grew up alone. I'm good. I can write a book alone. I can read all day. I'm good. But I think it's actually been harder for him because I'm used to being home, like you said.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. Do we have any other questions? I'm going to make sure I didn't miss any here. Oops. You know, I'm wondering, I know you probably can't tell us a whole lot about the movie, but can you give us a timeline when we might expect?
Oh my God. I wish I knew. Yeah, I actually think they're going to announce it soon. I'm not like allowed to say, but it is kind of cool.
Okay.
I don't know if I can say who it is. I won't. I'll let you be surprised.
No, let's not. We'll leave something.
But I am writing the screenplay, and we are on the final draft, and they're hoping to put it in production early next year, which is actually very fast. So fingers crossed I've heard from so many people it just like falls apart all the time. So I just keep waking up every day waiting for the email of like canceled. We're not doing it. Like, so as of now, we're still doing it. And she wants to start directing it in January of next year. And they're thinking that Winter Island will be shot in Vancouver.
Oh, British Columbia.
Like everything.
Oh my goodness.
But,
yes, because it's
wet,
so gorgeous
scary.
there.
Yeah.
I cannot wait. There's so much imagery in this book that I think will just come to life and be so wonderful, lush. And
there's more mom and more Rook in the film version. So I will keep you all posted.
Question, Allie. Look what you broke open. I love it. Okay. Yes, and Lori says maybe we can watch movies in theaters with friends and popcorn and not wearing masks.
I think we're getting close. We all just have to like keep thinking positively, keep thinking sunshine. We're going into spring and summer, like positive thinking at this point.
That's right. We're gonna get there.
Yeah,
for sure. Oh my goodness. All right. Let's see. Thank you for the great discussion. Oh, absolutely. So I have to tell you, I picked up this book. Well, this is how this went. I'm just going to tell you how this went. Anna asked if I would be willing to host lead the discussion. And of course I was like, oh my God, yes, totally. And then literally like 10 minutes later, she was at my house delivering the book. I mean, I couldn't figure out how she did that. It was so incredible. And I picked it up right away. I read the first half like in a sitting. And I mean, 36 hours the book was done. And then this was by the way several weeks ago, so I thought, oh darn it, maybe if I didn't known it was going to go that fast, I should have
it's short
closer. But it stayed with me, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. I always appreciate doing these book clubs because it's nice to just meet other humans, right? It's weird when I'm like talking and you can't see anyone. I have to like talk about the book like a teacher, and I'm like, nobody cares. So it's nice to talk to humans.
Right. Amazing. Anna, I see. There you are.
I'm here. I'm so sorry for disappearing there for a while. And thank you so much for so deeply carrying on, both of you and Tara. Thank you so much. And it's just, I loved this conversation. I felt like we were all, isn't it funny? But now when it really clicks, you do feel like you're right there together in a
Yeah.
conversation. Sometimes you really did. That was just so lovely. And congratulations, Crissy. I'm glad you've got, well, first of all, congratulations on this book. It's amazing. Congratulations on the movie. And that's
Thank
so
you.
cool that you're writing the screenplay, because I know that that
Yeah.
often doesn't go together.
Yeah, they
And you
made
get
me write an original screenplay to prove to them that I could adapt my own novel. So
That's fantastic. So it will be the way you want it to be.
yeah, I think
That's really,
so.
I can't wait.
Incredible.
And congratulations on getting your first, did you say have you had one shot or both shots?
So I ended up getting the Johnson & Johnson one shot.
One and done. Wow. Okay.
So I'm done, and
Right.
I did get a little fevery that night, but I told myself it was like a bad trip, and then I would just recover, and I sure did. So I'm 3 weeks out now. So I did go to Home Goods this weekend for the first time in 1 year. It wasn't that fun,
Congrats.
but I still went.
But it is so cool to like start to see the light and start to feel a lightness generally. Yeah. But hopefully things like this will keep. Sorry, because yeah. But such a good job. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm really looking. Thank you, everybody who joined in. This is really such a good group, and you guys are wonderful. It's nice to know in these darker times that there are these lights out there. So, thank you so much.
Thank you for having this, Anna. This is great.
Yeah, thank you. It was nice to meet all of you. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Crissy and Alicia.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Sarah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Pauline.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.